Senior diplomat Tyranny adjusted her crystalline sensory membranes as she observed the gathering from her elevated position in the Grand Chamber. The Galactic Trade Summit was proceeding exactly as it had for the past 300 cycles, with one notable exception. The humans had arrived. They appeared unremarkable at first glance. Their bipedal forms were neither the tallest nor the strongest among the gathered species. Their technology, while adequate, didn't outshine the quantum crystal matrices of the Solarians or the bioorganic synthetics of the Meridians. Yet something about them caused the most seasoned diplomats to emerge from negotiations wearing expressions Tyranny had never seen in her centuries of service. She focused her attention on a particular meeting table, where a human representative sat across from Ambassador Sol of the Centaurian Collective. The Centaurians were renowned for their unchanging traditions and rigid negotiation protocols, maintained meticulously for over 10,000 years. Perhaps we could consider a different approach, the human suggested, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic enhancement field. What if we viewed these trade routes not as fixed paths, but as flowing rivers? Tyranny's inner membranes quivered as she watched Sol's reaction. The ambassador's characteristic blue scales shifted through shades she had never displayed in public, hints of gold and violet that suggested deep neural restructuring. A river, Sol repeated, her multifaceted eyes widening. Yes, I can see it now. The routes could adapt, like water finding new paths. She paused, mandibles clicking in what Tyranny recognized as profound surprise. How have we never thought of this before? Tyranny quickly activated her neural recorder, capturing every detail of the interaction. This was the 17th such incident she had documented during the summit alone. Each time, the pattern was similar. A human would present an idea, often one that seemed deceptively simple, and their conversation partner would experience what appeared to be a fundamental shift in perception. As she reviewed her recordings, a subtle movement caught her attention. 3 members of the High Council had entered her observation chamber, their ceremonial robes shimmering with embedded quantum indicators of their authority. Diplomat Tyranny, the eldest, spoke, her voice modulated to prevent any sound leakage. Your recent reports have been noticed. Tyranny straightened her posture, honor markings glowing with appropriate respect. High Ones, I merely document what I observe. These observations must cease, the second counselor stated. Your recordings will be classified under Protocol Omega-9. Tyranny's inner chambers constricted in shock. Protocol Omega-9 was reserved for phenomena that could potentially destabilize galactic civilization itself. Surely, High Ones, these are merely diplomatic interactions. The third counselor moved closer, lowering their voice to a harmonic whisper. What you are documenting, it goes beyond diplomacy. Have you not noticed that none who experience these interactions can properly explain what transpired? They speak of new perspectives, of possibilities, of changes in thinking that defy rational analysis. The humans themselves seem unaware, Tyranny observed carefully. That, the eldest counselor declared, is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of all. They wield this power without consciousness of its effects. Every species they encounter emerges altered, carrying something infectious that our finest minds cannot quantify. Tyranny's recordings were transferred to a quantum-sealed container. As she watched her careful documentation disappear into the High Council's custody, she realized she had stumbled upon something far more significant than diplomatic anomalies. The humans had brought something to the galaxy that even the most advanced civilizations had never encountered. Not a weapon, not a technology, but something that spread through mere conversation, leaving change in its wake. And no one, not even the humans themselves, seemed to know exactly what it was. Station Director Zix 427 had overseen Nexus 7 for 3 standard cycles, and until the humans arrived, they could predict the day's events with mathematical precision. The Mercadian traders would arrive at exactly 300 hours, their crystalline ships glittering with ancient patterns unchanged for millennia. The Vexari merchants would follow at 4:30, their transaction protocols executed with unwavering consistency. But today, something was different. Director, his primary assistant, chirped through neural channels. The Mercadian Guildmaster requests an immediate audience. They claim it's urgent. Zix 427 secondary hearts skipped a beat. The Mercadians never requested anything urgent. Their species had elevated patience to an art form, planning trade routes centuries in advance. The Guildmaster who entered his office bore the traditional silver-scaled markings of their position, but their usual precise movements had been replaced by an almost frenetic energy. Director, the Guildmaster began, their translator crystal pulsing with unusual intensity. We wish to propose a modification to our established routes. Zix 427's sensory filaments stiffened. A modification. Your routes have remained unchanged for 12 generations. Yes, but the Guildmaster's scales rippled with iridescent patterns of excitement. We had a fascinating discussion with the human merchants yesterday. They asked us why we always travel through the Cassiopeia sector when the Carina Drift offers a more direct path. The Carina Drift has been deemed too unstable for commercial travel, Zix 427 stated automatically. That's what we thought too. But the humans suggested using gravitational anchors in new ways. Ways we never. The Guildmaster paused, searching for words. Ways we never imagined possible. There it was again. That word. Imagined. Zix 427 had heard it with increasing frequency since the human trading post opened on level 42. His surveillance systems had recorded a 300% increase in its usage across all species. Later that day, a Vexari trading consortium arrived 4 hours ahead of schedule, an unprecedented deviation from their precisely calculated temporal protocols. Their reason? A human trader had asked them why they waited so long between stops. We always thought waiting was necessary, the Vexari spokesperson explained, their crystalline form vibrating with unusual frequencies. But when the human asked us to explain why, we realized we had no logical answer. We just never questioned it before. Zix 427 retreated to their private chamber that evening, reviewing the station's behavioral analysis metrics. The changes weren't limited to the major trading species. The microscopic quantum collective had begun experimenting with new computational algorithms. The ancient stellar nomads had started exploring uncharted regions of space. Even the hyper-rational silicon minds had requested permission to establish an art appreciation center. They accessed the secure communications channel to Central Command, encoding their message with the highest priority encryption. Something is happening on Nexus 7, they reported. The humans, they ask questions. Simple questions. But these questions somehow bypass centuries of established behavioral patterns. Species that haven't changed their ways since the first galaxy are suddenly exploring new possibilities. The response came instantly. Monitor but do not interfere. Similar reports are coming from every station with human presence. We are attempting to identify the mechanism of influence. Zix 427 closed the channel and turned their sensory arrays toward level 42. Through the surveillance feeds, they watched a human merchant sharing what appeared to be a simple beverage with a group of diverse species. The human was speaking, gesturing with their hands, and their audience seemed captivated. As Zix 427 observed, they noticed something extraordinary. Each species present was exhibiting neural patterns that exactly matched the moment of discovery. The same patterns their ancestors had shown when they first achieved faster-than-light travel or unlocked the secrets of quantum communication. Somehow, through nothing more than conversation, the humans were triggering evolutionary leaps in cognitive function across multiple species simultaneously. And they were doing it over a cup of coffee. The crystalline spires of the Galactic Academy pierced the purple skies of Centauri Prime, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 setting suns. Within the analysis chamber, xenoanthropologist Kieferix studied the holographic data streams with growing concern. Display comparative cultural development rates for Sector 7, they commanded. The air shimmered as charts materialized, showing the progression of civilizations across multiple star systems. Something was wrong with the numbers. Very wrong. The Mycelian culture, unchanged for 50,000 years, had suddenly developed 3 new schools of philosophy in the past solar cycle. The Silicon Harmonies, famous for their rigid adherence to pure logic, had begun composing music. The Quantum Collective had started telling stories. Every affected system had one common factor: human diplomatic presence. Analysis complete, the Chamber's AI announced, cultural and technological advancement rates show an average increase of 300% in systems with sustained human contact. Crix's neural pathways tingled with excitement and apprehension. Show me the pattern correlation. Unable to comply, the AI responded. No consistent pattern detected. That was impossible. Every species followed predictable development paths. The crystalline empire advanced through mathematical progression. The stellar nomads evolved through cyclical spiritual awakening. Even the enigmatic deep space dancers followed recognizable patterns. But the human-influenced civilizations were each changing in completely unique ways. Krix accessed the secure feed from Research Station Delta, where a team had been studying a previously isolated colony of radiant mines. Within 3 standard months of establishing trade relations with human merchants, the colony had developed art forms that had never existed in their species' million-year history. Play observation log Delta 79. Krix commanded. A holographic display showed a human trader sharing what they called stories with a group of radiants. The radiant's normal crystalline structure began to pulse with new frequencies as the human spoke of possibilities and what-if scenarios. Pause playback, Krix ordered. Analyze neural patterns of the radiant subjects. The results were startling. The radiants weren't just listening. Their very consciousness was restructuring itself, forming new neural pathways that shouldn't have been possible according to their known biology. Krix's research pod hummed as they composed an urgent message to the Academy Council. Honorable Council members, the human influence appears to operate on a fundamental level we have never encountered. They are not merely sharing ideas. They are somehow awakening dormant neural capabilities in other species. Each affected civilization develops in unprecedented ways, as if discovering paths that were always present, but never visible before. Most significantly, this effect appears to be completely natural to humans. They exhibit no technology or focused effort to create these changes. They achieve these results through simple interaction, primarily through what they call conversation and storytelling. I request immediate clearance to proceed with direct neural observation studies. Krix's message was interrupted by a priority alert. A delegation of humans had just arrived at the Academy, invited by the Council to discuss cultural exchange programs. Through the observation window, Krix watched as the human representatives were led through the Grand Hall. They appeared so ordinary, walking among the floating energy beings and crystalline entities that made up the Academy's elite. Yet everywhere they passed, they left ripples of change in their wake. A quantum mind began sketching patterns in the air, something their species had never done before. A void walker stopped to admire the architectural beauty of the hall, despite their species' usual inability to process aesthetic concepts. Krix realized they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history: evolution through interaction. The humans weren't just bringing change. They were awakening something that lay dormant in every species they encountered. The question was, how many more surprises lay waiting to be uncovered? The archives of eternal memory stretched deep beneath the surface of Nexus Prime, their crystalline walls holding the collected wisdom of 1,000,000 civilizations. Krix followed the softly glowing path, their research equipment hovering silently behind them. Archivist Nentu awaited at the Chamber of First Contacts, their ancient form shifting between states of matter like morning mist catching sunlight. The Archivist was one of the few remaining members of the Observer species, dedicated to preserving the memory of all galactic encounters. Welcome, Seeker, Nentu's thoughts rippled through the chamber. You wish to understand the humans. It wasn't a question. Kivrix's research authorization had preceded them, but they suspected Nentu would have known their purpose regardless. Yes, honored one. I seek to understand their influence on other species. The chamber darkened, and countless points of light appeared around them, each representing a first contact event in galactic history. Kivrix recognized the familiar patterns, the crystalline empire's mathematical approach, the stellar nomad's cautious observations, the silicon mine's logical protocols. Observe, Nentu whispered, highlighting a cluster of recent lights. The human encounters. The scenes played out in the air around them. A human diplomatic team meeting the quantum collective, sharing stories of exploration. A human merchant introducing the concept of music to the logic spheres. A human child explaining imagination to a neural cloud. Do you see the difference? Nentu asked. Kivrix studied the recordings carefully. Other species arrive with weapons or technology. They seek to dominate or defend. The humans, they just talk. Deeper. Nentu encouraged. Look deeper. The scenes shifted, showing the aftermath of each encounter. Species that met humans began asking questions they had never considered before. They started exploring possibilities that had always existed but remained unseen. The humans bring no weapons because they need none, Nentu continued. They carry something far more powerful, the ability to awaken wonder. A new recording played, showing a human explorer's first meeting with an ancient crystal entity. The human asked why the crystal had chosen its current shape. In all its millennia of existence, no one had ever asked the crystal about choice. The concept itself transformed the entity's consciousness. But how? Kivrix's neural patterns pulsed with confusion. How do they trigger such fundamental changes through mere conversation? Nentu's form swirled thoughtfully. Perhaps that is the wrong question. Consider instead, why do we find their influence so profound? What does it tell us about ourselves? The archivist gestured, and new images filled the chamber. Countless species, each changed by human contact, each awakening to new possibilities. In all my cycles of observation, Nentu shared, I have never seen a species that creates change simply by being themselves. The humans do not conquer, they do not impose. They simply share their natural way of thinking, and in doing so, they unlock something dormant in others. Kivrix watched as the recording showed species after species experiencing their first moments of imaginative thought, their first glimpses of possibilities beyond the expected. The humans themselves don't understand what they do, Nentu concluded. They cannot comprehend a mind that doesn't naturally question, wonder, and imagine. And that perhaps is their most remarkable quality. They awaken these abilities in others without even realizing they possess something unique. As Kivrix prepared to leave the archives, carrying terabytes of recorded first contacts for further study, Nentu shared one final observation. The greatest powers in the universe are often the quietest. The humans don't change others through force or technology. They change them by showing them how to dream. The Cultural Exchange Center on Research Station Epsilon gleamed under the light of twin stars, its transparent walls designed to make visitors feel at ease. Kivrix adjusted their neural receptors, preparing to observe the scheduled interaction between human visitors and various species representatives. They hadn't expected a child to change everything. The human girl couldn't have been more than 7 standard years old, her small form practically bouncing with what humans called excitement as she approached the observation area. Her mother, a xenobiologist, had brought her along for the day's cultural exchange session. Why don't the stars make music? The child asked, pressing her hands against the transparent wall and gazing at the stellar dance beyond. Kivrix's primary neural cluster stuttered. Stars are celestial bodies. They emit radiation and light, not sound. The child turned, her eyes wide with what Kivrix had learned to recognize as wonder. But what if they could? What if each star had its own song? The whole galaxy could be like a giant orchestra. Something strange happened in Kivrix's highly evolved brain. Their synaptic patterns, trained through decades of rigorous scientific observation, began forming new connections. For a fraction of a second, they didn't just process the child's words. They experienced them. The stars above seemed to pulse with possibility. Kivrix's consciousness expanded, and for the first time in their existence, they perceived something beyond observable reality. They saw, felt, heard the stars singing, each with its own unique melody, harmonizing across the vast cosmic depths. "Are you okay?" the child asked, noticing Kivrix's unusual neural fluctuations. "Did you hear them too?" Kivrix's secondary processor tried to restore normal function, to remind them that stars don't sing, that such thoughts were illogical. But their primary consciousness had already been transformed. They had experienced something their species had never known existed: imagination. Later, in their private research chamber, Kivrix reviewed their neural recordings from the encounter. The data showed something remarkable. New synaptic pathways had formed, connections that shouldn't have been possible according to their species' known biology. A simple child's question had awakened something dormant in their brain, something that had always been there but never activated. Kivrix began composing their report to the Academy. The human ability appears to function through neural resonance. Their brains naturally generate patterns that stimulate the formation of new neural pathways in other species. Most significantly, these pathways appear to be pre-existing but dormant in many species, suggesting that the potential for imaginative thought may be more universal than previously believed. The humans themselves seem to generate these patterns effortlessly, particularly when engaging in activities they call wondering or daydreaming. Their young appear to be especially potent catalysts, perhaps due to their uninhibited approach to possibility thinking. What we are observing is not the transmission of a new ability, but rather the awakening of a latent one. The humans don't install new neural architecture. They simply show us how to use circuits we never knew we had. Kivrix paused in their recording, aware that something fundamental had changed. They were no longer just observing the phenomenon. They had experienced it. The stars above the station still seemed to shimmer with potential music, and their thoughts kept forming new patterns, exploring possibilities they had never considered before. Now they understood why some members of the Galactic Council feared this power. Once awakened, imagination couldn't be put back to sleep. It spread not through force or intention, but through the simple act of sharing different ways of seeing the universe. And Kivrix, looking at the stars through newly awakened neural pathways, finally heard the music that had always been there, waiting to be discovered. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with tension as representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered for an emergency session. The massive crystalline dome above reflected the light of distant stars, each one now seeming to hold new possibilities that made many of the assembled delegates distinctly uncomfortable. High Counselor Vix, their energy form crackling with barely contained agitation, addressed the assembly. "We have received reports from 17 sectors. The phenomenon is spreading faster than predicted." Holographic displays materialized throughout the chamber, showing statistics from across the galaxy. Young quantum minds creating art, crystal entities composing poetry. Even the Silicon collectives had begun exploring philosophical questions about existence. "Our youngest generations are most affected," reported Ambassador Lahan of the Stellar Conquerors. Their typically stable plasma form rippled with unusual patterns. They ask questions we cannot answer. They imagine things that cannot be. They dream. The word sent whispers cascading through the chamber. Dreams had always been a uniquely human trait, something other species regarded as a curious anomaly. Until now. "The humans must be contained," suggested one of the ancient ones, their crystalline form pulsing with traditional patterns. "We cannot allow this neural contamination to spread further." Kivrix stepped forward, their recent transformation evident in the new neural patterns that danced across their sensory membranes. "Honorable Council, containment is impossible. The change occurs through simple interaction. Every conversation, every shared story, Every moment of cultural exchange carries the potential for awakening. The chamber erupted in debate. Some delegates demanded immediate quarantine of human-influenced sectors. Others argued for embracing the change, pointing to unprecedented advancements in affected civilizations. A young quantum mind representative suddenly projected an unexpected thought pattern. What if this was meant to happen? What if we were always capable of imagination, and the humans simply showed us how to access it? The question resonated through the chamber, causing visible disturbance among the more conservative members. The ability to ask "what if?", the very foundation of imagination, had begun spreading even here, in the heart of galactic governance. High Counselor Vix called for order as data continued streaming in from across the galaxy. The Crystalline Empire reported their youth creating new geometric forms that defied traditional mathematical principles. The Deep Space Dancers had begun choreographing movements that told stories. Even the Void Dwellers, ancient beings of pure energy, had started experimenting with new forms of existence. We face a transformation unlike any in galactic history, Vix announced. This is not an invasion or an attack. We cannot fight it with ships or shields. The humans have introduced something far more powerful, the ability to envision change itself. Kavrix shared their recent experiences, how a simple child's question had awakened neural pathways that had always existed but remained dormant. The chamber fell silent as delegates processed the implications. The humans hadn't brought something new to the galaxy. They had simply shown everyone else how to access abilities they already possessed. The power had always been there, waiting to be discovered. As the council debated deep into the night, reports continued arriving from every corner of the galaxy. Species that had remained unchanged for millions of years were evolving culturally and intellectually at unprecedented rates. The change couldn't be stopped because it wasn't being imposed. It was being chosen, again and again, by individuals and civilizations discovering new ways of thinking. The price of dreams, it seemed, was the end of unchanging certainty. The galaxy faced a future where imagination ran free, where what if became the most powerful force in existence. And no one, not even the Galactic Council, could predict what would happen next. The observation deck of Research Station Epsilon buzzed with unusual activity as representatives from 30 different species gathered in secret. Kivrix watched as beings of crystal, energy, quantum probability, and countless other forms arranged themselves in a circle, all focused on the holographic display at the center. "Our findings are conclusive," announced Dr. Chen, the human xenobiologist who had become their unofficial spokesperson. "What we've discovered changes everything we thought we knew about consciousness itself." The hologram showed intricate neural patterns from various species, each one pulsing with newly awakened pathways. Next to them floated a recording of standard human brain activity during what they called daydreaming. Senior researcher Morel of the Quantum Collective moved forward, their probability field shimmering with excitement. "The human neural frequency exactly matches the resonance pattern we've detected in all awakened species. They naturally produce what we're calling the dreamwave." Kivrix shared their own recent experiences, how a child's simple question had activated dormant neural architecture in their highly evolved brain. "The humans don't create these pathways," they explained. "They simply show us how to access what was always there." The gathered beings processed this information, each in their own way. The crystal entity sparkled with new facets of understanding. The energy weaver's patterns shifted through previously impossible configurations. The Void Dancer performed a sequence that somehow expressed pure mathematical theory. "But why didn't we discover this ability on our own?" asked a young Silicon mind, their circuits pulsing with curiosity, an emotion their species had only recently begun to experience. Dr. Chen smiled, a gesture that no longer seemed as alien to the assembled beings as it once had. "Perhaps because you never thought to look for it. The ability to imagine possibilities beyond current reality isn't just a skill, it's a fundamental aspect of consciousness that humans never learn to suppress. The holographic display shifted to show various scenes from across the galaxy. Children of different species beginning to dream, ancient civilizations exploring art for the first time, traditional societies discovering new ways of thinking that had always been possible but never explored. The Council fears this change. Kivrix observed, their neural patterns expressing both understanding and determination. They see it as a threat to established order. Change is always frightening to those who have never imagined it, responded the Energy Weaver. But we cannot return to our former state of existence. We have seen too much, dreamed too deeply. The coalition members shared their experiences of awakening. Each story was unique, yet connected by a common thread. The moment when imagination first sparked in minds that had never known its touch. Some had been frightened, others exhilarated, but none wished to return to their previous state of existence. The humans must be protected, declared Morel. There are those who would seek to isolate them, to prevent further spread of this awakening. They don't understand that it's already too late. The dream wave has begun resonating across the galaxy. Dr. Chen nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. We're not just protecting humans, we're protecting the future of consciousness itself. Every species deserves the chance to discover their full potential. The coalition formalized their alliance as the gathering concluded. They would work in secret, ensuring safe passages for human traders and diplomats, protecting cultural exchange programs, and helping newly awakened species navigate their transformations. As the representatives departed, Kivrix remained on the observation deck, watching the stars. They remembered the first time they had heard the music of the cosmos, awakened by a child's innocent question. Now they understood. Humanity's greatest power wasn't in changing others, but in showing them how to change themselves. The dream wave continued to spread across the galaxy, one awakening at a time, unstoppable as the light of dawn. The first Wonder Academy opened its doors under the light of 3 suns, its crystalline spires designed through a collaboration of 30 different species. Each had contributed their unique perspective, creating architecture that made everyone see the universe anew. We've come so far, Dr. Chen remarked, joining Kivrix at the window. Yet in many ways, we're just beginning. Kivrix's neural patterns sparkled with agreement. The dream wave had become a fundamental part of galactic society, not as a disruption, but as an awakening. Species that had remained unchanged for millions of years were evolving culturally and intellectually, each in their own unique way. The ability to imagine possibilities had transformed from a feared contagion into the galaxy's most precious resource. The humans never needed weapons or advanced technology to change the galaxy, Kivrix observed. They just needed to be themselves. Below them, a group of students from different species worked together on a project, combining their unique perspectives to create something entirely new. The stars above seemed to pulse in harmony with their efforts, singing songs that had always been there, waiting to be heard by minds that had learned to listen. The power that had once struck fear into the heart of the Galactic Council was now spoken of freely. The simple, profound ability to ask what if, and imagine something more. And as the symphony of possibilities played on, the galaxy danced to a tune of endless wonder, each species contributing its own unique voice to the cosmic chorus of imagination. Somehow express the very essence of imagination itself. Kivrix stood beside Dr. Chen in the central chamber, watching as the first students arrived. Young beings of every conceivable form entered with a mixture of anticipation and uncertainty. Crystal entities floated beside quantum probability clouds. Energy beings pulsed next to silicon constructs. Each had chosen to explore the newfound potential within their consciousness. Welcome to the beginning, Dr. Chen addressed the gathering. Her voice translated into a dozen different forms of communication simultaneously. Here, you will learn not just to accept the gift of imagination, but to understand and develop it in your own unique way. The chamber's walls shifted, displaying the neural patterns they now knew as the dream wave. The familiar frequency pulsed through the room, not imposed but simply present, like sunlight waiting to be noticed. A young crystal entity raised a facet in question. Will we learn to think like humans? Kavrik stepped forward, their neural patterns flowing with newfound grace. No, young one. You will learn to think like yourself, but with access to abilities you always possessed. The humans simply showed us what was possible. The first lesson began with something the Coalition had learned from that human child so long ago, looking at the stars and imagining their songs. Each species perceived it differently. The quantum minds saw mathematical harmonies. The energy weavers experienced patterns of pure possibility. The silicon constructs discovered emotional algorithms they had never known existed. As the Academy flourished, similar institutions began appearing across the galaxy. The Galactic Council, seeing the inevitability of change, gradually shifted from resistance to careful acceptance. They established guidelines for controlled cultural exchange, ensuring that newly awakened species had proper support and guidance. The human representatives, finally understanding the full impact of their natural abilities, worked closely with the Coalition to develop safe and effective methods of sharing their gift. They learned that their casual questions and stories could fundamentally change other beings, and they embraced this responsibility with characteristic creativity. 6 cycles later, Kavrik stood in the Academy's observation dome, watching students from 100 worlds sharing their unique perspectives. A silicon mind was teaching a crystal entity how to encode emotions into mathematical formulas. A quantum collective was learning artistic expression from an energy weaver. A human child, visiting with her parents, was simply asking questions that